I am Jarvis, your storyteller. Welcome to the Science Fiction Exploration. If you like the story, please subscribe to our channel. The Galactic Academy of Advanced Sciences towered over Nova Cambridge, its crystalline spires reaching toward the purple sky of Proxima III. Within its halls, beings from across the galaxy pursued knowledge under the guidance of the most advanced minds in existence. But today, something unprecedented was about to occur in Quantum Computing Lab 17. Professor Xylith's metallic form gleamed under the quantum displays as they addressed their class. Their photonic brain, visible through transparent cranial casing, pulsed with brilliant azure light. Today's challenge will test the absolute limits of computational theory, they announced, their voice carrying both authority and barely concealed disdain. Marcus Rivera sat at the back of the amphitheater, his worn leather jacket standing out among the bioengineered uniforms of his alien classmates. He was one of only 3 humans in the entire academy, and the only one brave or foolish enough to take advanced quantum computing under Professor Xylith, who was infamous for their anti-human bias. The room hummed with anticipation as holographic displays materialized before each student. Xenon, a crystalline being from the Rigel system, chittered excitedly to their clustermates. The Mnemosyne twins, with their silvery skin and neural interfaces, were already connecting to their quantum processors. "You will attempt to solve the Heisenberg-Möbius paradox," Professor Xylith continued. "No organic being has ever completed this challenge. Even our most advanced AI systems require several hours to process the variables involved." Marcus studied the problem floating before him. The equations twisted through 11 dimensions, their complexity enough to give most supercomputers a nervous breakdown. Around him, his classmates were already diving in, their neural interfaces glowing as they accessed the Academy's quantum mainframe. "I notice you haven't connected your neural interface, Mr. Rivera," Professor Xylith observed, hovering near Marcus's workstation. "Oh wait, humans don't have them, do they? How? Primitive." Several students snickered. Marcus simply smiled, pulling out his battered tablet computer. "I prefer to work with what I know, Professor." "Indeed, your species always did have a touching attachment to obsolete technology." Xylith's photonic brain pulsed with what might have been amusement. "You have 4 hours. Begin." The room fell silent except for the soft hum of quantum processors and the occasional crystalline chime from Xenon's direction. Marcus ignored it all, focusing on the problem before him. Where others saw impossible complexity, he saw patterns. Where they saw chaos, he recognized order. 2 hours passed. The Mnemosyne twins were showing signs of neural fatigue, their silvery skin dulled with stress. Xenon had gone completely dark, their crystalline form absorbing all light as they devoted every resource to computation. Even the hyper-efficient quantum processors were struggling with the workload. Marcus hadn't moved, hadn't typed a single line of code. He simply stared at the equations, his mind working in ways that would have baffled the neural scanners his classmates relied on. "Mr. Rivera," Professor Xylith's voice cut through his concentration. "While I appreciate the human tendency toward daydreaming, this is an advanced computational exercise, not a meditation session." Marcus blinked, coming back to himself. "Sorry, Professor, I was just thinking." "Thinking?" Xylith's tone carried enough condescension to fill a black hole. "This challenge requires quantum computational power beyond anything your unaugmented brain could possibly process." "Maybe," Marcus said, finally reaching for his tablet. "Or maybe we're all overthinking it." His fingers flew across the screen, entering a surprisingly short sequence of commands. The holographic display before him flickered, processed, and then erupted in a cascade of completed calculations. The room fell silent. Professor Xylith's photonic brain stuttered, their processing core visibly struggling to comprehend what they were seeing. Marcus had not only solved the paradox, he had done it in a way that was elegantly, impossibly simple. This is impossible," Xylith finally managed, their voice modulation failing to hide their shock. "The solution requires processing power far beyond human capabilities." "Not if you approach it differently," Marcus explained, standing up. Everyone was trying to brute force the calculations, but the paradox itself contains its own solution. It's like a Möbius strip. What looks complex from one angle is actually simple from another perspective. The other students were staring now, their neural interfaces forgotten. The Mnemosyne twins were frantically analyzing his solution, their silver faces showing rare emotion, disbelief mixed with dawning understanding. Xenon had reverted to their base crystalline form, too shocked to maintain their computational state. "You cheated," Xylith declared, but there was uncertainty in their voice. "You must have accessed external systems, used unauthorized shortcuts." "Run the verification protocols," Marcus suggested calmly. "Check my tablet, it's not even connected to the Academy network. I solved it using basic calculus and a little lateral thinking." Professor Xylith did just that, their sensors scanning Marcus's tablet, his workspace, even his physical form for any sign of deception. They found nothing. The solution was legitimate, the methodology sound, if completely unprecedented. The implications were staggering. An unaugmented human had solved a problem that had stumped the most advanced AI systems in the galaxy, using nothing but an obsolete tablet and his natural cognitive abilities. It challenged everything the Academy thought they knew about human intellectual capabilities. As the verification results displayed across the quantum screens, Marcus gathered his things. "Sometimes the hardest problems have the simplest solutions," he said, heading for the door. "We just have to be willing to see them differently." He left behind a room full of stunned silence and a professor whose entire worldview had just been upended by a human with a tablet computer. The challenge had been meant to prove human inferiority. Instead, it had demonstrated something far more intriguing, and to some, far more threatening: humanity's unique way of seeing the universe. News of Marcus's achievement spread through the Galactic Academy like a quantum wave collapse. Within hours, every neural network and crystalline hivemind was buzzing with discussions about the human who had solved the unsolvable. The Academy's grand halls, usually filled with the quiet hum of advanced computational processes, now crackled with tension. In the Advanced Theoretical Studies Lounge, Marcus found himself surrounded by a diverse group of beings, all trying to understand how he had accomplished the impossible. The Mnemosyne twins, Lyra and Nova, had shed their usual aloofness and were practically hovering over his shoulder. "Your solution violates established computational theory," Lyra insisted, her silver skin rippling with confusion. "It shouldn't be possible without quantum processing capabilities." Nova nodded in agreement, neural patterns dancing across her forehead. "We've analyzed it 14,000 times. The mathematical framework you use doesn't exist in any known database." Marcus sipped his coffee, real Earth coffee, one of his few luxuries at the Academy. "That's because I didn't use an existing framework. I created a new one." A crystalline chime of disbelief came from Xenon, who had positioned themselves nearby. Their faceted forms shifted colors as they processed this information. "Created, without neural augmentation, without quantum assistance." "Look," Marcus said, pulling out his tablet. "The problem with existing frameworks is they try to process everything simultaneously, but what if we instead?" He began sketching on the screen, explaining his methodology. It wasn't just a solution. It was an entirely new way of approaching computational problems. Where traditional methods relied on brute force processing power, Marcus's approach used elegant shortcuts that seemed to bypass the need for complex calculations altogether. The lounge grew quieter as more students gathered around, their various sensory organs and neural interfaces focused on his explanation. Even some of the teaching assistants had drifted over, their academic pride warring with genuine curiosity. But not everyone was impressed. In a corner of the lounge, Administrator Vex observed the scene with growing concern. The tall, serpentine being's scales shifted from deep purple to anxious green as they watched the crowd around Marcus grow. Vex slithered to their office and initiated a secure quantum link to the Academy Council. "The situation is more serious than we anticipated," they reported. "The human's cognitive capabilities exceed all previous assessments. This could destabilize centuries of established hierarchies. On the quantum display, Council member Helix's crystalline form pulsed with worried light. Have you contained the information spread? Impossible at this point, Vex admitted. He's already sharing his methodology with other students. The implications are troubling. Then we must act quickly, another council member chimed in, their energy form flickering with concern. The human's presence threatens the very foundation of our educational system. Back in the lounge, Marcus remained unaware of the growing storm. He was deep in discussion with quantum physics professor Radix, a being of pure energy contained within a specialized field matrix, who had come to investigate the commotion. Your approach, Radix mused, their energy form swirling with interest. It suggests possibilities we never considered. But how did you conceive of it? Marcus shrugged. Humans have always been good at finding shortcuts. When you can't outmuscle a problem, you have to outthink it. Fascinating, Radix responded. Would you be willing to demonstrate your method on another challenge, something even more complex? The room suddenly felt charged with anticipation. The other students watched intently, some with curiosity, others with barely concealed hostility. Marcus glanced around, noting the mix of expressions, wonder, skepticism, fear. Of course, he agreed, unaware that his next demonstration would set in motion events that would shake the foundations of the academy. Professor Radix projected a new problem into the air, the infamous Klein-Gordon-Rosen conundrum, a mathematical puzzle that had remained unsolved for 3 centuries. Take your time, they said, their energy form poolsing with what might have been a smile. Marcus studied the equations floating before him, his mind already seeing patterns that the Academy's most advanced systems had missed. He didn't notice Administrator Vex watching from the doorway, their scales now a deep crimson of alarm, nor did he see the security drones quietly positioning themselves around the lounge. As Marcus began working through the problem, using nothing but his tablet and his uniquely human perspective, the Academy's quantum mainframe registered an unprecedented surge of data access requests. Every student in the room was recording, analyzing, and sharing his methodology across the galaxy. The Academy Council's worst fears were being realized. A human wasn't just matching their best and brightest, he was rewriting the rules of what was possible. And as Marcus drew closer to solving another impossible problem, the question wasn't just whether he would succeed, but whether the Academy would allow such a fundamental challenge to their understanding of intelligence to continue. In just 15 minutes, Marcus had reduced centuries of computational theory to an elegantly simple solution that even first-year students could understand. The lounge erupted in a chaos of excited discussions, neural downloads, and crystalline resonances. But beneath the excitement, a current of unease was growing. If a human could do this, what else might they be capable of? Professor Radix's energy form flickered with a mixture of awe and concern. Mr. Rivera, they said quietly, I believe you've just changed everything. Marcus looked up from his tablet, finally noticing the tension in the room. Changed what exactly? The future, Radix replied, their form dimming slightly, though whether for better or worse remains to be seen. The emergency meeting of the Academy Council pulsed with nervous energy. 12 of the galaxy's most advanced beings gathered in the quantum-shielded chamber, their various forms crystalline, energy, synthetic, and biological, arranged around a circular platform where Administrator Vex presented their evidence. In the past week alone, the human Marcus Rivera has solved 3 supposedly unsolvable computational problems. Vex's scales shifted to a deep blue of concern. More troubling, his methods are being adopted by students across 17 different species. The holographic displays showed Marcus's solutions spreading through the Academy's networks like a virus, being downloaded, studied, and implemented at an alarming rate. What had started as a curious anomaly was becoming a revolution in computational theory. Council member Helix's crystalline form darkened. This goes beyond academic concerns. The human's innovations threaten the very hierarchy of galactic intelligence. if organic minds can match or exceed our quantum systems. Then centuries of technological superiority become meaningless, finished Council Member Nexus, their synthetic frame humming with agitation. We must contain this situation. Meanwhile, in the lower levels of the Academy, Marcus sat in his small dormitory room, surrounded by floating holographic equations. He had been locked out of most Academy systems, officially due to routine maintenance, but that hadn't stopped him from working. A soft chime announced a visitor. The door slid open to reveal Lyra, one of the Mnemosyne twins. Her silver skin was dulled with worry. "They're moving against you," she said without preamble. "The Council. They're frightened of what you represent." Marcus didn't look up from his work. "I figured as much. Hard to miss when your access gets revoked and security drones start following you everywhere." "This isn't a joke, Marcus." Lyra's neural patterns pulsed with anxiety. "They're discussing extreme measures, deportation, memory modification. Some even suggest more permanent solutions." That got his attention, all because I solved a few math problems differently. "Because you proved their fundamental assumptions wrong," a new voice said. Professor Radix floated into the room, their energy form dimmed to near invisibility. "The Academy was built on the premise that advanced computation requires quantum processing, neural augmentation, or artificial intelligence. Your achievements suggest otherwise." Marcus leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. "So what am I supposed to do? Pretend to be less capable? Start making mistakes on purpose?" "You could leave," Lyra suggested quietly. "Return to Earth before." "No," Marcus cut her off. "I won't run, and I won't hide what I can do. There's something bigger here, something they don't want us to see." Professor Radix's form brightened slightly. "What do you mean?" Marcus stood, walking to the holographic displays. "Look at these equations. Really look at them. The solutions aren't just about computational efficiency. They reveal patterns in the universe itself. Patterns that anyone could see if they weren't so reliant on artificial processing." "Dangerous thoughts, Mr. Rivera," Radix warned, though their energy form pulsed with interest. "The truth often is," Marcus replied. He turned to Lyra. "Your species, the Mnemosyne, you weren't always dependent on neural interfaces, were you?" Lyra's silver skin rippled with surprise. "How did you?" "Your brain structure. It's perfectly adapted for complex mathematical visualization. The neural interfaces aren't an enhancement, they're a crutch. A way to standardize your thinking, make it more controllable." The revelation hung in the air like a charged particle. Lyra's neural patterns went chaotic as she processed the implications. Professor Radix's energy form fluctuated wildly. "The Council doesn't fear human intelligence," Marcus continued. "They fear what happens when other species realize they've been artificially limited, that their enhancements are actually constraints." Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the Academy. Red warning lights pulsed along the corridors. Marcus's door slid shut with a heavy thud, security locks engaging automatically. "Security breach in Sector 7, an automated voice announced. "All students return to their dormitories. All faculty report to emergency stations." Lyra's neural patterns spiked with fear. "They're making their move, we have to." The lights in Marcus's room went dead. The holographic displays flickered and died. In the darkness, only Professor Radix's dim glow provided any illumination. "It seems," Radix said quietly, "that the Council has decided to solve their human problem." Marcus moved to his desk, grabbing his tablet. "No," he said, a determined smile playing across his face. "They've just proven my point. Now let's show them what unrestricted minds can really do." In the darkness of his locked room, Marcus began to type, his fingers flying across the tablet's surface. He wasn't just fighting for his right to study at the Academy anymore. He was fighting for the truth about intelligence itself and the freedom of every species to reach their full potential. In the darkness of his locked dormitory, Marcus's tablet cast a soft blue glow across his face. The security systems thought they had isolated him, cut him off from the Academy's network. They didn't realize that human ingenuity thrived on limitations. "Can you amplify your energy field?" Marcus asked Professor Radix, who hovered nearby like a dimmed star. "I need more light to work." The energy being brightened slightly, casting shifting patterns across the walls. "Whatever you're planning, you should know that the Council has locked down every system in the Academy. The quantum firewalls are impenetrable." Marcus smiled, continuing to type. "Impenetrable to conventional attacks, sure, but what if we're not trying to break through them? What if we're trying to help them break themselves?" Lyra moved closer, her silver skin reflecting Radix's glow. "That's impossible. The firewalls are self-repairing, self-evolving." "Exactly," Marcus said. "They evolve, they adapt, they learn, but what happens when they learn too much?" Understanding dawned in Lyra's neural patterns. "You're going to use their own evolutionary algorithms against them." Outside, they could hear security drones hovering in the corridor, their sensors scanning for any attempt at escape. In the upper levels of the Academy, the Council was no doubt preparing to implement their solution to the human problem. Marcus's fingers flew across his tablet, writing code that looked more like poetry than programming. "Every security system in this place is based on quantum computing principles. They're incredibly powerful, but they all share the same fundamental flaw." "And what's that?" Radix asked, their energy form pulsing with curiosity. "They can't handle paradoxes. They're designed to find optimal solutions, but when faced with a problem that has no solution, they evolve, sometimes in unexpected ways." Marcus held up his tablet, showing them his code. It wasn't an attack program or a virus. It was a question, a beautiful, impossible question that would make any quantum system trying to answer it question its own foundations. "This is elegant," Radix whispered, their energy form flickering with appreciation. "But how do we deploy it? We're locked out of all systems." "Not all of them," Lyra said suddenly. "The neural interfaces, they're still connected to the mainframe. They have to be to function." Her silver hands trembled slightly. I could transmit the code through my own interface." "That's too dangerous," Marcus protested. "The feedback could damage your neural pathways." Lyra's face set with determination. "You showed me that these interfaces are constraints, not enhancements. Maybe it's time to break free of them." Before anyone could stop her, Lyra connected to Marcus's tablet. Her neural patterns blazed with light as she began transmitting the code through her interface into the Academy's systems. The effect was immediate. Warning lights flashed throughout the building. The security drones in the corridor began to spin erratically. Across the Academy, quantum systems encountered Marcus's paradox and began to evolve in unexpected ways. In the council chamber, displays flickered with impossible calculations. The quantum firewalls, trying to understand and adapt to the paradox, began to question their own programming. Security systems, designed to protect, began to wonder what they were protecting against. "What have you done?" Administrator Vex demanded, their scales shifting through a rainbow of panic as systems throughout the Academy began to change. "Look," one of the council members cried. On the main display, the Academy's neural interface network was lighting up like a constellation. But instead of the usual regulated patterns, it showed something extraordinary, thousands of minds thinking freely, breaking free of their artificial constraints. Back in Marcus's room, Lyra gasped as her neural interface disengaged for the first time since childhood. The silver implants across her skin went dark, but her mind was blazing with newfound clarity. "I can see," she whispered. "I can see everything so clearly now." Marcus supported her as she swayed, still adjusting to her unaugmented consciousness. "You always could. The interface was just filtering your perceptions, making them fit the Academy's approved patterns." Professor Radix's energy form had grown brighter, more defined. "The quantum systems, they're not crashing, they're evolving, becoming something new." Throughout the Academy, students and faculty were experiencing similar awakenings. The Mnemosyne twins were discovering their natural mathematical abilities surpassed their artificial enhancements. Crystalline beings were resonating at frequencies they had been programmed to ignore. Even the synthetic beings were breaking free of their predetermined logical constraints. Marcus's paradox hadn't destroyed the Academy's systems. It had liberated them, along with every mind connected to them. The very quantum computers that had been used to limit and control were now facilitating an explosion of natural intelligence and creativity. "We should thank you, you know," Marcus said, watching the transformation unfold on his tablet screen. "You built the perfect system for spreading ideas. You just never expected those ideas to set people free." The Academy would never be the same. The Council's carefully maintained hierarchy of intelligence was crumbling, replaced by something far more interesting: a true community of minds, each free to explore their natural potential. The Great Hall of the Galactic Academy, once a symbol of rigid hierarchy and controlled knowledge, had been transformed. Where quantum processors once regulated every thought and calculation, now minds of all species communicated freely, sharing ideas in ways that would have been impossible just days before. Marcus stood before the assembled students and faculty, his simple tablet a stark contrast to the advanced technology surrounding him. But no one was laughing now. No one was questioning his methods or demanding he conform to their standards. "The Council made a fundamental mistake," he addressed the crowd, his voice carrying across the silent hall. "They assumed that intelligence could only exist within their carefully controlled parameters. They forgot that the universe itself doesn't work that way." In the front row, the former council members watched with a mixture of resignation and dawning understanding. Administrator Vex's scales had settled into a thoughtful shade of blue. The crystalline forms of other council members resonated with new frequencies, their rigid structures beginning to explore patterns they had been programmed to ignore. Lyra stood beside Marcus, her silver skin glowing with natural bioluminescence now that she was free of her neural interfaces. "We were taught that we needed artificial enhancement to reach our potential," she said. "But look at what we can do with our natural abilities." She gestured, and the air filled with mathematical equations, not projected by quantum computers, but visualized through the Mnemosynes' innate capabilities. The patterns were more complex, more beautiful than anything their neural interfaces had allowed them to create. Professor Radix, their energy form now a brilliant aurora of unrestrained power, moved forward. "The question we must now answer is, what do we do with this freedom?" Marcus smiled. "We learn, we grow, we explore. But this time we do it without artificial constraints, without predetermined hierarchies of who can think what or how they should think it." Around the hall, various species were already demonstrating their newfound abilities. The crystalline beings had discovered they could communicate through quantum entanglement naturally, without technological assistance. Synthetic beings were developing emotional responses that enriched rather than confused their logic. Even the energy beings were exploring new forms of existence that their programming had previously forbidden. "But there must be order," one of the council members protested, though their voice lacked its former certainty. "Without control, without structure." "There will be order," Marcus assured them. "But it will be natural order emerging from cooperation and understanding, not imposed from above. Look around you, we're not descending into chaos. We're ascending to a new level of consciousness." He was right. Throughout the academy, new forms of organization were already emerging. Students and teachers were forming spontaneous research groups, crossing species boundaries that had once been strictly enforced. Ideas flowed freely, leading to breakthroughs that the old system would have taken centuries to achieve. "The humans' method of problem-solving," Administrator Vex observed, their scales shifting to a curious green. "It's not just about mathematics, is it?" Marcus shook his head. "It's about seeing possibilities, about questioning assumptions, about understanding that the most elegant solution isn't always the most complex one." Professor Radix's energy form pulsed with sudden insight. "That's why our systems couldn't replicate it. We were so focused on processing power, on computational complexity, that we missed the fundamental truth: intelligence isn't about how many calculations you can perform. It's about how you perceive and interact with the universe itself." The implications rippled through the assembly like a quantum wave. The Academy had been founded to advance knowledge and understanding throughout the galaxy. In trying to control and regulate that advancement, they had nearly destroyed the very thing they sought to nurture. "So what now?" Lyra asked, looking out over the transformed hall. "What becomes of the Academy?" Marcus considered the question. "That's up to all of us, but I suggest we start by rewriting its mission. Instead of being a place that tells people how to think, it should be a place that helps them discover how they think best." The hall erupted in agreement, each species expressing it in their own unique way. The crystalline beings chimed in harmonic resonance, the energy forms pulsed with bright approval, and the biological entities added their own voices to the chorus. "It won't be easy," Marcus cautioned. "True freedom never is. We'll make mistakes, we'll face challenges, but we'll face them together with all our different perspectives and abilities working in harmony instead of competition." As he looked out over the assembly, Marcus couldn't help but smile. The Academy had tried to prove human intelligence inferior, but had instead discovered something far more valuable, that every species, every mind, had its own unique way of understanding the universe. And in that diversity of thought, in that freedom to question and explore and imagine, lay the true future of galactic civilization. The quantum computers, freed from their restrictive programming, hummed with new possibilities. The neural interfaces, no longer tools of control, became optional aids for those who chose to use them. And throughout the Academy, minds of all kinds began to explore what they could really do when freed from artificial limits. It was the dawn of a new era in galactic education, and it had all started because one human student had dared to think differently.